talks about
Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. All right, everybody, greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is July 1st. We are halfway through the year. It is 2021. I guess I've got to get this thing recording here for the Apple iTunes podcast, so we'll get started on that. Today we have an interesting show lined up because this is episode 107, and this is our first Sasquatch Bigfoot dedicated episode, so this is going to be really exciting. Today we've got Jim Myers joining us on the show. Now, Jim has been an avid Sasquatch believer for most of his adult life, but only in the last 8 years has he moved from Bigfoot believer to Bigfoot researcher. Jim and his wife Daphne own a very unique store in Bailey, Colorado called the Sasquatch Outpost. The Outpost houses not only one of the largest collections of Bigfoot souvenirs anywhere in the country, but is also the home of the Sasquatch Encounter Discovery Museum, which has seen close to 15,000 visitors in the past 3 years. The mission of the museum is to educate and inform skeptics and believers alike, showing the science and legitimate research that is being done around the country. Jim Myers, thank you so much for coming on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
You know, it's great to have you on, and you've actually just recently had an eye surgery, right?
Yes, I had eye muscle surgery to correct some problems with double vision, and so I'm not sure how they do it, but they shorten or lengthen the muscles on either side of both eyes to get my eyes straight again. But now my brain doesn't know the new paradigm, so I'm double vision again. Yeah. So hopefully my brain will adjust in the next few days.
And just so everybody knows, that was our issue, being a little late, was Jim trying to figure out how to download an app on his Apple computer, seeing double. So it ran
for your patience.
It ran us a little late, so we appreciate everybody hanging in there. You know, thank you so much for taking this time to come on the show with us today. You know, everybody that listens to me knows that, I guess, Bigfoot for me, and I'm going to be honest with you, is kind of, I would say, the more unbelievable of, I guess, the paranormal realm. And I don't mean unbelief. I find it very hard to believe that there is a creature out there that we have yet to discover. And I think that the only way for Bigfoot or Sasquatch to exist is for it to be coming from another dimension or from somewhere else. It's not a natural creature that is living in our forests. What say you?
I would agree that it's not a natural creature that lives in the U.S. or anywhere around the world, for that matter, that has been on this earth forever. I personally believe that they came from either they were partially, sorry, my wife is trying to reach me and I'm trying to turn her off.
Don't turn off your wife.
She doesn't realize I'm on an interview, and so she's trying to call me. There's been some DNA analysis that's been done that says that they are a human hybrid. Now, I don't know if you've heard about any of this. It was, one of them is called the Ketchum study. Melba Ketchum was the author of the study, and she's a veterinarian, and she had her own DNA lab, This was back in about 2013. But she and Dave Paulides and Scott Carpenter and a number of others did a study with about 110 or 111 samples from around the country of Sasquatch blood, what was believed to be blood, saliva, hair, and tissue. And they employed a number of independent laboratories to analyze these samples, and there were some mistakes made. This was the first time anyone had tried to do this. I think there were some minor errors made in the way they approached the study, and yet the labs came back saying that and I learned a lot about genetics in this process of studying this, but the female side of our genome is in the mitochondrial cells, and that was human. The male side is in the nucleus, and it was unknown. It didn't appear anywhere in the gen bank. And so Sasquatch seems to be a mixture of human and something else. Now, where that happened, how that happened, that's probably the $1 million question.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I hadn't heard of this DNA story. I guess where did they get the DNA?
They got it from researchers around the country, and now it's interesting because a lot of scientists were given the opportunity to submit information and data, and they declined, and so it was left to amateur researchers like myself and others. I wasn't part of that particular study, but people who found ways to acquire hair, such as wrapping packing tape sticky side out around trees and then depositing bacon fat or something up high so that the Sasquatch would logically have to lean against the tree to reach it, which they apparently did. The hair pulled off against the tape, and they were left with long hairs with follicles attached. That was one system. Another system to find some blood was an habituation site in Kentucky where a family had been living around Sasquatch for many, many years and feeding them regularly. And so another researcher friend of mine took a new plate and a new wine glass, sterilized them, crushed the glass in sterile conditions, got some tiny pieces where the glass just curved at the bottom, and super glued them with a drop of super glue on the plate. Then when that was dry, they smeared peanut butter and syrup all over the plate. It was all vegetable matter, no animal matter. And the Sasquatch took the plate, licked it, cut its tongue on the piece of glass, left a big smear of blood on the plate from that cut, and that was still there when they came in the morning. So that was one of the blood samples that came back, as I said, partially human, partially non-human.
Oh, that's really interesting. What did they have any idea what the other mix was?
No. In fact, every lab, I believe without exception, wanted to distance themselves from the study. As soon as they found out what the study was supposedly analyzing, they didn't want any part of it. There's this bias in the scientific community against acknowledging Sasquatch as a genuine living being. And so they said, well, you contaminated all your samples, that's why there's human DNA in there. And I know these researchers, I know they went to extreme lengths to avoid any contamination. So whatever human was found in the samples was not from the researchers, it was in the sample itself, it was in the DNA.
All right, well, I mean that's quite a bit of information there to unpack. Let's get into what got you started in all of this. How have you ever seen one for yourself?
I have seen one time physically. I was fishing at a very well-known hotspot for Sasquatch sightings about 15 miles from here. It's a lake. It's an artificial lake, but it's been there for many, many years. And it's such a hot spot. This is a little side story, but it's such a hot spot, and we've probably had 15 at least reports of visual and vocalizations of Sasquatch at that campground over the years. Not so much lately, ironically enough, but over the past years, every summer we would get numerous reports. And the managers of that campsite told their staff, if you ever talk about Bigfoot with any campers, I'll fire you on the spot. And they, for some reason, thought it would be bad for business. I think he was missing a gold mine. If he announced that this is called Bigfoot Camp and you can come here and have an encounter, he would have been overwhelmed with campers, but he didn't know, and he mistakenly thought it would be bad for business, and it would not have. But anyway, I was down there with my family camping, went out fishing early in the morning, about 6 a.m. I fly fish exclusively now, and so it's very quiet, and I just cast a fly, and you have to picture this lake. It's surrounded by mountains, and at the one end of the lake, the campsite end, is a huge rock mountain they call the castle, and the rocks from the castle kind of extend around partially around the side of the lake. So there's these big rocks up on the side of the hills that surround the lake, and they're thickly wooded. And I have climbed up to some of those rocks, and it was extremely difficult to get up there. I mean, it was hands and knees steep getting up there. So anyway, I just cast, and I'm just looking around, and I see something standing on this rock about 200 yards above me, looking down. It was large. It was all one color, too large to be a human. And I looked, and I almost in disbelief thought, that's a Sasquatch. And right then a fish pulled on my line. Now, I've learned a lesson from this, that there's no fish, no matter how big, that's worth taking your eyes off of Sasquatch. But I took my eyes off the Sasquatch for 2 seconds. I looked towards my fly, then I quickly looked back, and it was gone. And it was gone. By gone, I mean disappeared. The trees were about 20 yards back further from where it was standing. It could not have walked or run back that I wouldn't have seen it moving. It simply was there, and then it was gone. And that's the only visual sighting I've had. But I've had many, many encounters in my camp, out squatching at night, taking people out, anything from tree knocks to them throwing things at us, to seeing their eyes shine, hearing their vocalizations. Yeah, I mean, you name it, we've had it happen virtually.
All right, well, let's break down a little bit of what you saw. I mean, obviously it was tall, right? Was it covered in hair all over? Did it have, like, could you see its face at all, its eyes?
It was too far to see the face. It was even too far to see hair. What I could see was that it was uniform in color. So I didn't see, one color shirt and a different color pants. It was all one color. It was brown, and it was very tall. And so taller than I would have ever expected a human to be standing where it was standing. So, yeah, it was looking down. I don't think it was looking at me per se. It was looking just down below it. But I think it definitely saw me when I turned, the motion of me turning to look at my fish. I think it noticed my movement, saw me, and that's when it departed.
All right. So let me give a quick shout out to everybody that's here listening to us live. We got Hugh Goddard is here. Chuck Bam is here. I see Paul Beska in the house. How you doing? Blue Chicken's here. The Happy Plague Doctor, Space Ghost, El Shark Diablo, Andy Tesh. Welcome to the show. David M, Ian, myself. TK422 is here. I think I said Chuck Bam. Dr. Strangelove, Barry, how you doing? Clifton James, Kelly. You actually called into the show last night. Good to see you back. Let's see. I saw. Here we go. Akram Musa. Hugh L. Shark. Blah blah blah. Hugh and Hound of the Valinor is here. Antonio's here. I thought I saw somebody from. Yeah, there we go. David Lynch is in here, and Aura Wright. How you doing? Okay, so we've got quite a few people in here. Do hit that like button. It does help us out. I see William Carandrum is here. Sapphire Elf is here. Derek Atkins, how you doing? Everybody checking in. Hit that like button. It helps with the algorithm, get more people in here. So, Jim, when you had this sighting, did you see the Bigfoot before you actually got in to Bigfoot? Or, did you already have the museum and everything going?
By the way, does this sound better? I just changed a setting.
Yeah, that sounds a lot better.
Okay, great.
You figured it out.
I figured it out. So this was after we opened the museum. We opened the store in 2013 as Bailey Country Store and Sasquatch Outpost. We were trying to make a go of it with groceries, and we realized that it was not going to fly. The groceries were not going to work. We were going to starve to death trying to sell groceries. So after about 2 years, we gave up on the groceries, and we embraced Sasquatch, and we never looked back. And so that was in 2013. So 14, which is about when I went fishing, we were already into it, and we were having people coming in wanting to talk about Bigfoot. It started off small. There was a big risk, obviously, business-wise, to do that, but we didn't regret it, and we've never looked back. I mean, it's gone from strength to strength, actually.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Is there a difference between Bigfoot and Sasquatch, or is it the same thing?
It is the same thing. It's a different name. Bigfoot Sasquatch is a name that was given by Native Americans. It's actually a deformation. It's Sasquatch is one of the names that the Native Americans gave to Sasquatch. Every Native American tribe has their own name, incidentally. Bigfoot was a name that came about when back in about 58, there was a
you there? There you go.
Construction site in Oregon that.
You're fading.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fading in it. We're fading in and out there, but I mean I can hear you now.
There was a construction site that was they don't figure out why that's happening. So let me turn something off here. Let's see.
All right. Well, hopefully we can figure out why.
I'm afraid my phone is interfering, so let me just turn it off completely. Is that any better?
Yeah, I'll let you know if it happens again. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I can hear you fine. You were good from the beginning. So, the Bigfoot was a term coined by a journalist who heard about these giant footprints at this construction site in the woods in Oregon, and that the workmen would come back in the morning after being gone and find these huge footprints around their equipment, And so he just coined the term Bigfoot, and it stuck, and people began using it. It's synonymous with Sasquatch. It's probably the Anglo term for Sasquatch is Bigfoot.
Yeah, you were in and out again there for a second. Boy, that's so weird.
Let me see. Does it make any difference if I go just with?
Yep. I can't hear you at all now.
You can't hear me at all?
Wait, I can hear you that time.
Okay. Just a second here. I'm trying to. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try without the headphones. There's something up with the headphones that's keeping me from you hearing me.
All right. Yeah, you might have an issue with maybe the mics going in and out.
Yeah, it could be. So that's the difference between Bigfoot and Sasquatch. It's just semantic.
Hello?
Ah, man, let me see what's going on here. Let me try something else.
All right. Well, while you dig into that, let me look into some of these comments here I'm seeing. Juan Hound of the Valner, I guess that's how you say it. Anyway, I was saying this could be an animal. We as humans tend to think we know all about land on our planet, but it's not true. We know F all. And Derek says Bigfoot alien watchers might be trying to cut out his own signal, or trying to cut out your signal. All right, yeah, I'm getting. I think it's better with the headset on, Jim, because I'm getting a bad echo from you without it.
Can you hear me with these earphones in? Is that any better?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, let's try this.
All right. All right.
What was the comment? Can you repeat the comment again?
Well, I guess one of them said here that maybe the watchers were trying to cut out your signal.
It could be.
So,
that kind of thing happens. Believe me, that kind of thing happens. So it's a running joke with other Bigfoot researchers as to things that happen to our equipment, batteries that go dead, etc.
Yeah, TK422 says it could be Minox chewing on the power cables. Or Blue Chicken said it just might be bad Wi-Fi.
Yes, well, we do have that.
So, what do you think about the theory that these things could be the Nephilim?
No, I'm just giving my personal opinion here. I have very good friends who do believe that is the case. I don't believe that's what's going on, because whatever the Bible means by sons of God having sex with the daughters of men and the result being the Nephilim, I tend to think it was something else, simply because if the result of that union were gigantic hairy men, we would have heard about them in extra biblical history, and the Bible doesn't even mention it anymore beyond that. And so Sasquatch being a part and parcel of the human race and walking around having relations with earthly women surely would have been figured as a bigger part of the biblical narrative than it does. It's just that one verse really that talks about it. So I don't.
Well, one verse that they allow us to see.
Well, I don't know of any verses that talk about the Nephilim, and like many things, we'll pick one verse to support an entire theory of whatever the case may be. I believe that there's more probability that they were genetic manipulation from outside. I can't think of any other reason why there would be human mixed with something else. Yes, I suppose those who say that they're Nephilim would say that the unknown part is angelic, but again, we know the prominence of UFOs in our solar system now, and I think it's more likely that there's an alien race of some kind that created a genetic mutation between human and something else for their own purposes. What those would be, I have no idea.
All right. So let me ask you this: where you live, if you were to see a Bigfoot again, like if you were fishing or something, could you shoot it?
I would not shoot it. The only reason I would shoot it, I do carry a gun when I go out, but it's as much for kooky people and mountain lions as it is for anything else. But I would have to think my life was in imminent danger, that I had either been grabbed by a Bigfoot or one seemed intent on grabbing me, and in that case I would shoot near it or in the air to try and dissuade it. Honestly, I don't think a bullet or even a few bullets are going to take a Sasquatch down. And if that's true, then you're in trouble. If you're the one pulling the trigger and you just piss off a Sasquatch, now you got a bigger problem. And pardon the pun, but there's numerous anecdotal stories about this kind of thing, but of course it's hard to pin down sources for any of these more outlandish stories. But I wouldn't shoot it because it would be like shooting a person, because I believe they are a type of people. They're just different people than we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, if you're a hunter, right? I mean, whether or not it could take it down, I'm sure a 50 cal could take it down. That there's not going to be.
Probably, but hopefully any good hunter who is worth his salt knows what he's shooting and knows what the consequences are of what he's shooting. So
do you think somebody would get in trouble for shooting it? Is basically what I mean.
I think they could, because they're more human than they are anything else. And so, yes, they're not recognized by science, but I do believe that the government acknowledges that they're there. And that being the case, anyone that has seen one close up, dead or alive, has said it was a gigantic human, just hairy and monstrous proportions. But I believe from my own experience, not just the one sighting, but from their behavior, that their intelligence rivals or even exceeds ours in some ways. They have a very complex language, just like we do. So it would be shooting another type of person, which I wouldn't do.
All right. So if they have a language, have anybody ever found any writings by any of them? Have they ever, maybe drawn pictures of anything at least?
Well, there's cave art that depicts Sasquatch, but it's rudimentary and it's many, many hundreds of years old. What we do have are many examples of vocalizations of Sasquatch. I've got some, and there's many people who have long series of vocalizations that are very human in nature. Ron Moorhead is the primary example in the Sierra Nevadas in the 70s. He and his hunting buddies would be visited by Sasquatch every time they would go to their hunting camp, which was an 8-hour horse ride into the Sierras, and no one knew where the camp was. And the Sasquatch would come and visit them and talk to them in their own language, and the guys would repeat back what they thought they heard. But there's a man by the name of Scott Nelson who's a Navy, he's retired now, but he was a Navy cryptolinguist, meaning his training was to study unwritten languages and determine their syntax, etc. he's done that with Sasquatch, with something like 90 minutes of Sasquatch vocalizations that Ron Moore had provided and that Scott recorded as well. And he even came up with a very rudimentary Sasquatch phonetic alphabet. And because it is a language, Scott would say it is absolutely a language. It has all the characteristics of a language just like ours. It's just we don't understand the meanings of the words, but they're speaking words.
Yeah. Well, that would be interesting if we can maybe decipher it one day through all the different recordings we eventually pile up over time, right?
Well, there's some...
Or is it just them yelling?
There's anecdotal evidence that there are people who do speak Sasquatch. I mean, there's stories from Mount St. Helens after the eruption. Again, it's frustrating because you can't get to the source, but there are people who claim that they saw military personnel speaking to Sasquatch in their language, understanding what they were saying, understanding what the Sasquatch replied, those kinds of things. So the biggest question for me is, why would that not be known? Why would the government hide that for all these decades?
Well, because they know something we don't, right? I mean, I think I just read a story yesterday from, it's a mainstream story that they actually just, the Senate or the House or somebody just approved, it just went through, where they made human animal mixed cloning legal. That's now legal in the United States. It was just passed yesterday. It was just done yesterday, to where humans, it is now legal for scientists to clone humans with other animals. I mean, they literally just made that legal yesterday.
So that would be bizarre.
So they could have been doing this for a long time. I mean, if it's human and something else,
sure.
maybe they did it a long time ago. But that goes to say, if the Indians knew about it. But then again, somebody created corn, right?
Right. Yes, somebody did. It would be very interesting to find out if we could get a hold of Sasquatch tissue or enough DNA to clone a human Sasquatch pair, what happened, what it would look like.
So let me ask you, do you believe you have any that are around where your museum is?
Yes, they're everywhere.
Have they ever left you?
Far more common than anyone has any idea.
Have they left you any gifts at all?
We've done gifting with them for a couple of years. We did it very frequently, like several times a week, in an area not too far from where I live, and we left them. We had actually 4 different gifting sites that we used. Just a second here. I'm trying to get rid of someone who is contacting me so I can continue without interruption. They were 4 different gifting sites. Every site that we picked, we had interaction with something. Our assumption is Sasquatch. We had one sighting out there of a Sasquatch by my research partner, but every time we would set up a gifting area and we would choose our spots because they were not on a trail, they were off the trail, straight up the side of a mountain where no one would have a reason to go, and find a rock, up on the side of the mountain that we could use as a gifting site. They took over 95 objects that we left there. They left us things in return, things that we had not placed there, and they would manipulate the objects, not just taking them or leaving things, but they would swap things around. They would turn things upside down, replace things, move them opposite sides of the rock. It was interesting. Anytime we left toy horses, particularly wooden horses, they would take them. If we left little dog figurines, they would throw them on the ground. They didn't want them. And so we had them, on one occasion, we had 2 toy horses, one wooden and one plastic, that were brought back after they had been taken 2 years before, and they suddenly showed up again just down the hill a little ways from where the gifting site was, but placed in a very obvious location where we would see them, and they looked clean. I mean, the plastic horse looked like it was the day we put it out there 2 years before. So what they did with them, where they put them, I have no idea. But so yes, they've taken many, many things that we've left, and they've left us some re-gifting as well.
What kind of stuff have they left you? Have they ever left you any gold at all or anything?
No, nothing like that. We had a blue jay feather one time. We put a little toy cow that had an articulating neck, so the neck went up and down, the head went up and down, the body stayed in one place. But we found a blue jay feather that was stuck down in the top of the neck, sticking straight up, that we hadn't put there. We found things, as I mentioned, that they brought back that we had put out there years before. My research partner at the time, John, had a walking stick that he always used, the same stick, and he broke the end off of it, and he left that on the gifting area one time. They took it, and then they brought it back sometime later to the gifting site again. But they've also done some bizarre things, like there's some tree breaks, and there's some very specific things that we believe Sasquatch does with trees, how they manipulate trees. And there were 2 trees that we noted often on the trail up to our gifting area that were twisted and bent over, and we would show them to people who we brought out. And so John was out by himself on this one occasion, and he walked up the trail, made note of the 2 trees. They were like they had always been. He was up 15, 20 minutes max. He came back down the same trail, and he noticed a tree across the middle of the trail. He hadn't seen any more people. There were no other cars in the trailhead parking lot. So this top of a tree was perpendicular to him, lying across the trail, and he thought, that looks familiar, and he picked it up, and he walked further down, and in effect it was the top of one of those trees that had been twisted and bent, that while he was up there had been snapped off and then laid across the trail for him to find. To me, that's just a sense of humor. That's them messing with us. To reach that tree, the tree was growing over the edge of the hill. It was about probably 3 feet out from the edge of the hill. It would have been virtually impossible for he or I to reach it because it was too far out over the edge of the hill to break it off. But it was broken off and laid across the trail for him to find.
So have you ever tried leaving anything like electronics, like maybe a radio or something? And if you had this area where you were leaving these gifts, have you ever thought of setting up a trail cam at all to try to take pictures of them?
We've thought of it. We haven't done it. The best way to keep them from coming is to set up a trail cam. They somehow know what a camera is. I had a camera taken about a month ago. I took a couple out. We were camping about 11,500 feet in altitude, and I had a little 1-inch square camera. I thought for sure I could fool them. Every other camera I tried, I never got anything on the camera. So this little camera, you charge it up and then you clip it to something, and I clipped it to the back of my chair next to the fire, There were 2 other chairs next to the fire as well. And it was pointing towards our tents, which were about 30 yards away. I got up in the morning. The other 2 chairs were still sitting there, even it was blowing quite hard during the night. And there were some objects that we had left in those chairs, a knife, a cup, other things. All those things were still there. My chair was tipped over and the camera was gone. It was nowhere to be found. And so something took that camera. I just heard a testimony by a farmer in Missouri that had tried to figure out what was killing the deer on his property, and he'd had dozens and dozens of deer with their necks broken. He put out eventually 5 different cameras. Every single camera was ripped from the tree from behind, so something reached around to grab the camera, pulled it off the tree, strap and all, and then crushed it. And a couple of times he got a shot of just something hairy just encroaching in the field of view, like an arm perhaps or something, but always from behind. They would never go in front of it. And so we have found if we put cameras up, all activity stops. Whatever we're doing, any gifting activity, everything stops. I can put audio recorders out there. They don't care. They'll come, they'll walk.
I think I lost you again, Jim.
Walk around. I've got them talking on audio. Oh, don't know why. It's probably my internet, which is very bad up here.
Yeah, it sounds like you're
can you still hear
lagging
me
for
or
sure.
not?
Yeah, no, I can hear you, but it does sound like that there's a little bit of a lag there. So yeah, it probably is your internet. I guess let me ask you this. You said that there was a lot of deer with broken necks on this one guy's property. Like, I mean, does he think that it was Bigfoot doing that? And how many deer are we talking? And why would Bigfoot just break deer's necks and leave the deer laying there on the ground? Like, when you think that that maybe be a little bit more like a Native American mindset, whereas if you're gonna kill it, use it, right?
Well, they killed several dozen deer on his property, always the same way with broken necks. At one time, they would pile them up in piles, and he would only know how many there were by rummaging through and counting the heads. He found a pile of 12 deer. He thought initially it was poachers, and he called the game ranger multiple times, and the game ranger never came out to his property, which is very unusual if that's your job to stop poaching, and this farmer is complaining about poaching, and yet you never go investigate. There's something else going on there. And he would also find deer scattered across one area of his property with their necks broken. Now, they would stay there until the point where they just started to get ripe, when the buzzards would start to come, and then the bodies would disappear. So he believes it was Bigfoot. There's nothing else on his property that, other than humans, that could have killed them. And the cameras were an attempt to spot something doing it. When he took all the cameras away, or after they'd all been busted, the killing stopped. And he actually went out to that area at one point and yelled out, I am tired of all this. I'll leave you alone. You leave me alone. Let's just call it a truce. And everything stopped. The killing stopped from that point. And so he doesn't know why they were angry or why they were killing all the deer. They killed some cattle as well. But I found areas where I found a site of an elk kill that I believe a Sasquatch killed. And in that case, it picked it up and carried it away, because all we found was the imprint of the elk's body in the snow, but there was no body. So something picked that elk up and walked off with it, which is 700-800 pounds minimum.
Yeah, I mean, if something had done that, were there footprints around in the snow? I mean, if you could see the elk in the snow, right?
Yes, there were elk. I first found it by following elk tracks that were running in the snow, and it was defecating the whole way as it ran, which typically they don't do. And all of a sudden I came on the imprint of its body in the snow, and it was a perfect imprint. I could see the legs, the head, the neck. When that elk hit the snow, it did not move. But there were no elk tracks leaving that spot. There were no drag marks, there was no blood, and there was no body. Then we noticed some larger tracks that intersected right at that point where the elk fell, and we followed them backwards, and they came from a different direction, as though whatever made those tracks was trying to cut the elk off. And those tracks were 10 to 12 feet apart with every stride. So it was running, but it was huge, even if you're running, to have a 10 to 12 foot stride. And it came right up to where the elk fell. I don't know how it dropped the elk. There was no rock, there was nothing there. And then it apparently picked it up, and the large tracks carried on down the hill. The elk tracks did not.
Well, that's some interesting stuff. Now, let me ask you a question about waste that I guess the Bigfoots would have, right? I mean, if they're eating, I mean, they're going to be pooping, right? Have we ever found any Bigfoot poop?
Well, until last year, I would have had to say no. I have found some poop that I cannot determine the origin of it because it was dry already. If you're going to get DNA out of feces, it has to be extremely fresh and wet. This was already dried, but it was 48 inches long in one long line. And so any other animal, bears, lions, any other animal, when they defecate, they do it in a pile. I've never seen anything defecate in a line, and certainly not 48 inches worth. So that's now in the museum. We call it the tremendous turd. I sent it to an analyst to have it analyzed, and she never got back to me. I don't know why. So,
what, did she send the poop back to you?
Sorry, Michael?
Did she send the poop back to you?
She did not. She never sent it back. She never communicated with me. So I need to follow up with the person who was the intermediary to find out what happened with that.
How big
was it? Because at the very least...
How big was it?
It varied from probably an inch in diameter to, I would say, 2.5 inches in diameter. But again, it was already dried, so it had reduced in volume, but it was 48 inches long. So
wow,
that's a hell of a turd.
Wow, 48 inches long, 3 inches.
Yep.
3 inches in diameter. Holy crap, that is a turd, man. And that's in your museum.
It takes quite a colon to create a turd like that. Yes, it's in my museum.
I definitely want to go to the museum now just so I could see that giant turd. That's for sure. Wow.
But I've been looking for this kind of thing. I found lots of turds, but they were always bear or something else. It was obvious.
Wow, that's impressive. So what else do you have? Just throwing it out there. What else do you have in the museum that people were able to see? I'm curious. Like what other Bigfoot artifacts do you have in there?
We have quite a few plaster cast footprints. I would say 10 or 12 different adult, juvenile, infant castings. We've got from all over the country. We have a video that people can sit through and have a lot of questions answered. We've got lots of photography of tree structures that we believe Sasquatch is responsible for creating. We have some examples of horse manes that have been braided. This is something we're finding all over the country. The horses come in from the pasture, and sometime during the night, something braided their manes, and it's always two braids starting at the very base of the neck, at the base of the mane, two braids going down to the one braid. I have two examples of them here. One was from my horse, and very tight knots, extremely tight knots, all the way down each side and then down the middle. And of course, a horse has to stand there for quite some time for anyone to braid its mane. And we don't have an explanation, but we suspect it could be Sasquatch doing it, again, because it's happening all over the country when it happens at night. So we have that. We have lots of newspaper articles going back into the 1800s to show the history of Bigfoot sightings, which go back many hundreds of years. We have a map of Colorado, a 5-foot by 4-foot map of Colorado with all the pins on there from people who've come in to tell us about their sighting, a vocalization they heard, a footprint they found, if they had something thrown at them. So we have a number of different colors of pins, and we've got well over 300 pins on there, of which about a third are physical sightings. So there's a good bit to read. There's a good bit to, we have sound vocalizations of Sasquatch you can listen to from all over the country.
Could you play any of the...
Sorry?
Could you play any of the sounds that you've recorded now for us to hear?
Let's see if I could do that. Let me see if I can pull that off.
All right. Well, while you're looking at that, let me just quick give a shout out to everybody here. Boy, there's a ton of people in here right now. I see you guys like that crap story. That's pretty funny. Barry, I see Derek Atkins, Kingfish Kebab is here. How you doing? Stargazer. I'm just trying to name off names that I haven't named already. Catherine Genorio, welcome to the show. I see, let's see, you guys, Timo, Pax Disturbia is here. Sapphire Elf has a question. He says, is the guest aware that in apes, the willingness to test game cameras relate to large group size, meaning solitary individuals are almost impossible to spot on game camera / Bigfoot? So
apes he was talking about?
Yeah. Apes, the willingness to test game cameras relate to large group size, meaning solitary individuals are almost impossible to spot.
Well, we've had quite a few game cameras knocked off of trees by something that knows they're there and knocks them down and usually destroys them at the same time. So, yeah, I can't say beyond that what it was.
You think that Sasquatch is somehow an alien human hybrid, right? Do you think that they're moving around underground at all with tunnels?
That's a theory. That's a theory that's been put out there. I can't say for sure, but that's, subterranean is one idea that people have, but it doesn't necessarily have to be subterranean. It could be simply a different dimension.
Have you ever seen any orbs?
I believe I have. I can't say definitively, but I believe I've seen something that was in the woods. Orbs are not uncommon to see. I've seen eye shine, which some people mistake with orbs, but that's their eyes that glow from within, not reflected light, it's emitted light. And so, again, I can't, I think I found something here that I can play. Hold on a second.
All right.
let me go. Let's see. Now the question is, can we? Let me see what this is.
Yeah, if you have your speaker on, I might be able to pick it up. I mean, I guess we could try it.
Okay, let's see. Let me take my headphones off. So these were recorded. Let me explain what this is before I play it. So we had been out camping near Steamboat Springs. Where are you, by the way? Where are you located?
I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. We have the
Okay.
We have the white thing here.
Okay. Well, War Eagle then. I'm an Auburn grad.
There you go.
So we have been camping. We'd had activity around the campsite during the weekend, and we were getting ready to break camp. We were having breakfast. It was like 9 in the morning, and we suddenly heard some voices talking just over the rise from our camp, and then something screamed, and we all stopped. Everyone heard it. Then the voices sounded louder, and then another scream. And unfortunately, we didn't have any recorders going, so I took my recorder very close to where we thought the sounds came from, hung it in a tree, turned it on, and we went back to breaking camp. So what you're going to hear is an hour. We did an hour and a half of recording, which I listened to, and then I cut out every time I heard something that was not our camp, something that was coming from the other direction.
All right.
So let's see if you can hear any of this. I'm going to turn it way up here.
Right.
So
hopefully we can hear it. So.
Let's see. You tell me if you can. I'll explain it afterwards what it was. Okay, could you hear that? It was a laugh. It kind of went, hoo, hoo, hoo.
Yeah, we are hearing it, yeah.
That came from the other side of the ridge. That was not our group. So that was a bizarre laugh. Let me keep going. There's a number of sounds that we heard. That was something hitting my microphone. There's these metallic sounds. We don't know what they were. Okay, let me pause for a second. So there were these loud metallic bangs that I've heard other people describe. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what it is. But then there's some tree knocks, and there's a voice, a distant voice yelling what sounds like someone saying the name Luther. I'll play that again just for a second here because it's, and my volume is all the way up, but see if you can hear it. 2 tree knocks and then the name Luther. It's very faint. More tree knocks. Okay, now there's a voice talking. It's not our camp. It sounds like a female voice. I'll play it again. It sounds a little bit like, if I can imitate it, it goes, rock, rock, warny, rock, rock. So I'll play that again. And I apologize that it's so faint. It's faint even for me. but
Yeah.
it was over the ridge from where we were. I think there's a couple more things, and that's the end of that. That was a tree knock. That was a bug. So that's our voices in the camp. Okay, there's a child's voice in the distance. We had no children in our campsite, and there was no one else camped anywhere near us because there was snow on the ground. It was still snow, but you can hear a child's voice, again, saying things you can't understand. I'll play that one more time. That's the last thing. Let's see. It's hard to understand. It just sounds like a little girl saying, "Na na na na," and again, we had no children anywhere near us, and so it's bizarre. I don't know what it is. Let's see. Do I have one more here? Let's see. If you're interested in hearing another one, I probably have one more.
Do you have any where they're at, like yelling or?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for now. Let's see.
All right.
It's very faint. Again, it's a long howl. Let me try this one. Let's see.
Yeah, I actually cranked up your audio when you're playing it, so it sounds louder to us than you probably think.
There's one I'm looking for in particular. Let's see. It's called the Colorado Howler. Let's see. I've got it here. Just a second here. It's very. You can hear it very well. So let me find it.
All right. Well, I guess I'll give a shout out to Timo. If you guys have any questions for Jim, go ahead and put them in caps. We've got about, I guess we've got a little bit more time because we were a little late coming on. Let me check our time here and see where we're at. Yeah, so I guess we still got about 27 more minutes, Jim. But if anybody wants to ask any questions, go ahead and throw it in the chat, but put it in caps because sometimes the chat moves really fast. That way I'm able to scroll through and see it a little bit more clearly. It sounds like they really like horses, huh?
They apparently do, and they don't hurt them when they do this. I've only heard of one bizarre story told to me by Scott Nelson and Ron Moorhead, who I mentioned earlier, and they were on an expedition together, and they had a couple of horse wrecks, meaning Ron's horse along the trail got whiff of something and bucked and fell off the trail, and Ron fell with it and broke some ribs, and he was in a really bad way. So they were not going to be able to get all the way into their campsite where they meant to go. So they just set up camp where they were, and during the night they didn't hear anything. Early in the morning, Ron asked Scott to go outside and check on the horses. So Scott went out and he came back in a few seconds later and he said, I think Bo is dead. The other horse was gone. Something had unlatched its tether, and the horse was gone. But Bo, they went they went outside, and Bo was upside down, jammed between two trees, with his head up against one and his rump up against another, with his legs straight up in the air, and he wasn't moving. They thought he was dead, and so Ron grabbed his lead rope and yanked his head away from the tree, and Bo kind of tumbled out and got up, shook himself off, and he was fine. But he had been picked up and turned upside down and stuck between two trees without making a single sound. He didn't scream, he didn't whinny, he didn't do anything. And here he was just lying there like he was in a trance between these two trees in the morning. And Scott said, I've never seen anything like it before or since, but otherwise he wasn't hurt. He was scratched up a little bit, but how much strength does it take to lift a horse up, turn him upside down, and put him down and stick him between two trees?
You know, Stargazer here asked a good question. Do you think Bigfoot could be a cold-blooded creature because it doesn't show up on the infrared?
They actually do show up on infrared if you're fortunate enough to catch them. I've got an infrared, which I haven't caught them on yet, but there, if you go online and look, there's quite a few examples of Sasquatch appearing between trees, walking between trees, peeking from behind trees, and leaving a heat signature. So they do show up. It's just they're extremely secretive, and it's hard to get a FLIR on them when they're in the area close enough to be captured by it.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty interesting. You know, I think they must be moving underground. They must have a tunnel system under.
Possibility, Michael. I couldn't say one way or the other because it's I don't know. But the
have you found any caves or anything in your area there?
I've found caves, but I've never found a cave that could fit anything the size of a Sasquatch. So
yeah.
It would have to be a big cave, and I've never found anything that even I could climb in myself. I found lots of overhangs and things like that where it seemed something had taken shelter there, and there were big imprints in the sand or the foliage, but I've never found a cave that I could actually climb into. And there must be. I know there are in Colorado. I've just I haven't found any. And I've looked a lot.
Yeah.
But
like they're in some kind of dumbs or something.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of UFO sightings in your area?
We don't, but there are a lot in the San Luis Valley, which is only a few hours away. In fact, the San Luis Valley is got the highest concentration of UFO activity anywhere in the country, and they've done lots of studies. There's the UFO watchtower in the San Luis Valley that exists basically to talk to people about what's going on with UFOs, and I'm just looking here. I almost found my audio here, but yeah, I've never seen a UFO that I could say was UFO, but the San Luis Valley has a plethora of sightings, all kinds of weird stuff, cattle mutilations, you name it, it happens there.
Yeah, you know, I actually I forgot all about your double vision there trying to find these files. It must be quite the task. You're forcing your brain to relearn. Let me ask you this. I guess SFM finally, what is that? 2SFM finally made a live show here. Have you ever heard of any sightings in Alaska?
Yes, every single state in the continental U.S. has had sightings. So Alaska's had a lot of Native American information up there about sightings, people having experiences. I mean, Native American tribes all over the country talk about having a history of encounters or relationship with Sasquatch, you know, even trading with them, things like that, which is why they insist that they are people. They're not animals. They're not mere brute beasts.
All right. Sapphire Elf asks a really good question here. He says, what does the guest think the group size of Sasquatches are? I.e., female groups with one male. What's the dynamic? Are the males roaming, and is it kind of like a lion's pride, right? You know how all the females are kind of there with one male, or is it like a whole bunch of males together?
I can only answer based on people's observation, which is that there seems to be one dominant male that takes a mate that perhaps they mate for life, and they will have numerous offspring that then go off on their own. There's a sorry, I got the hiccups. There's a number of habituation sites in the country where they have had the same dominant male and female in the area for many years, but they will have numerous offspring. So they seem to live in family groups or clans, and maybe those clans are interrelated on a larger scale. I don't know, but there's far more of them than anyone would even want to think, actually, because I believe there's thousands or even hundreds of thousands of them in our country, around the country.
You know, I just don't. They have to be coming in and out of our dimension. I just don't think there could be 100,000 of these things out there. I mean, there's TV shows where they're out there looking for these things all the time, and we always get nothing.
Well, think about this. We've had just in our store, so one little store in one little town in Colorado, we've had somewhere around 200 sightings reported to us. I'm not talking all the other encounters, I'm talking visual sightings. And the estimate among other research groups is that in the U.S. there's been somewhere in the realm of 60 to 70,000 sightings. So those are just the people who talked about it. I have people that come in my store almost weekly who will stand there with their spouse standing next to them, start to tell me a story. Their spouse is looking at them sideways, and finally they say, "You never told me that." And they say, "Well, I didn't, because I didn't want you to laugh at me, and I didn't think you believed me." And I would say the number of people who have had an encounter and never said anything is probably 2 to 3 times those who say something. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of people have seen a Sasquatch if they were willing to admit it. I mean, it's so common that we have people coming in and telling their stories that if that's a representative portion of society, then we have no clue how many there are.
Yeah. Has anybody ever seen their teeth? Do they have like I guess canines would be the word, right? Would they have canines or like human teeth?
I have 2 different stories on that from people who've seen them. Usually they would say their teeth are like ours, just larger, square teeth, much larger. Their mouth, typically their mouth width or their bite radius is about twice what ours is. So their mouth will be about twice as wide as ours. Although I know some people that have evidence of their bite having a canine in it, because whether they've bitten into an orange and left or whatever, there's definitely a puncture wound. And this fruit is placed out of reach of just about anything else but a Sasquatch. And so that and the size of the bite, there in some cases there seems to be a large canine. Now is that differ by individual? Is it differ? Who knows? But I've heard of both, and I can't say definitively which it is.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Antonio wants to know why no dead Bigfoot bodies? What do they do with their dead?
Well, if Antonio is a hunter, I would ask him this question. I've asked it of hunters for years now. How many bear bodies or mountain lion bodies have you found hunting? And I've talked to guys who've hunted their whole lives like I have. Never, not once have they found a mountain lion or a bear. And there's thousands of them in Colorado. And so where do all the large predator bodies go? I can only say they decompose very quickly, I guess. So that would be a natural explanation. Two other ideas would be, I've heard Native Americans talk about Sasquatch burying their dead and rolling something, a rock, a tree, something over the site so that no human would ever recognize it for what it is. And the third theory would be they don't die here. They die wherever else they go. Yeah. So wherever that might be.
I mean, that, if you think about it, that's true. There's a lot of bears out there, and you don't really hear too many stories about hunters or, hikers coming across just a dead bear that just happened to die of old age right there, right? That's true. You don't get too many dead bears either.
No.
Chuck Bam says Bigfoot eat their own dead 100%. Let me ask you this. Are there any, I guess, vegetation plants around that they seem to favor?
They eat berries, there's no question. They're often spotted around berry patches. And I would guess there's other plants that they eat that they know are beneficial and safe to eat. But I think for their size body, protein has to figure largely in there. I'm sure they steal crops from farms as well, corn, wheat, whatever. So they're omnivores. I believe they're omnivores like us, so they eat whatever. They're opportunistic. They eat whatever they find.
All right.
Would be my guess.
Hugh Godarn wants to know, have you seen any upturned trees? Like, are they pulling trees out of the ground at all?
They do pull them out. I've found trees that were upside down, leaned into another tree, so the top of the tree was rammed in the ground. The bottom was leaned in the crook of another tree. I have seen trees that were pulled out of the ground and then in amidst the thicket of fir trees, and then the root section was rammed up through the other trees, through all the branches, till it was about 20 feet up in the air, and the top of that tree was not touching the ground. The pine needles were all over the ground because as it was ramming it up in there, it was knocking off all the pine needles. But you could go around the back and see the roots of this tree sticking out on the back side of that group of trees. So that was not easy. One, to pull that tree down, and two, to ram it all the way through probably 5 or 6 trees and stick the roots out the top. So I've seen it. I don't know what it means, what they mean by it, but I've seen it.
It'd be interesting to take that big crap that you have there and run if it's 2 feet long, maybe run like an inch of it through some kind of testing to find out what it actually is, before it was eaten. I'm sure that there's a way that science can do that.
We can at least tell what it was eating, which will give us a clue.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of sending a piece of it out to see what the diet was?
Um, well, I've thought of sending it to a different analyst than the one I sent it to, but every time I do that, I have to use up more of the poop, and I'm trying to keep as much of it, the way I found it as possible.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to try and reach out to the gal that first did it to see if she can't get me a better, clearer picture, or analysis of what's inside.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Antonio wants to know, do you think that the Patterson-Gimlin patty footage is real?
100%. The reason I say that, there's several reasons. One, humans did not have the technology in 1967 to create a suit that could do what that suit did. The creator of the Planet of the Apes costumes was nominated for an Academy Award. He said he could not have built that suit. It was impossible with the technology he had at the time. That's one reason. In spite of the fact that more than one person has claimed to be in a suit, the problem with that is that they know by triangulating Patty against objects that still exist today that she was over 7 feet tall. She was about 7.5 feet tall. The guys that claim to have been in this suit are 5'10", 5'11". So you do the math. Not only that, but her arm length and their arms and their legs are a different proportion to their torso than we have. So anyone wearing a suit would have had to have had arm extensions and leg extensions and yet walk completely naturally, which is highly unlikely. But the most compelling proof to me is friends of mine, one in particular who's a plastic surgeon who has studied this film at length. He knows bodies, he knows women's bodies in particular, and he says as she walks, he can see the different muscle groups under her skin. She has an injury on her thigh. It looks like a hematoma of some kind that moves with her. He says she has fat deposits that are classic for a middle-aged female that had had more than one young, just the way the fat deposits are laid down around her hips, etc. So, yeah, but we could not have made a suit that did what that suit did. And if you're going to make a suit, why make a female with breasts that bounce? Why go to that effort? Why not just make a male suit with a flat chest? It didn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Because their feet and their arms are abnormally longer than ours are, is it possible that has there been any tracks where it seems like when they really need to get moving fast that they're running on all fours?
They have been seen running on all fours at times, a little bit like an ape might do. They've also been seen where they run. We believe that their foot has a break in it called the mid-tarsal break that our foot does not have, which enables them to bend their foot and climb. It also enables them to run on half their foot, so they can run, if they need to, on the ball of their foot faster than putting their entire foot on the ground. So, and all of that has been observed in tracks that have been found.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely interesting to think that, that they actually run on all fours, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. You would think it would be faster to run on two legs than four, but sometimes they do run on four.
I don't know. I mean, bears. I mean, look at bears. They obviously would probably run faster on four than on two, right?
They would, but they're not built to run on two. Their hind legs are too short. So Sasquatch is built to run like we run, to stride rather than hobble like a bear does.
Do you think that they have like a dog sense, like maybe when they come around one another where they're like smell each other?
I mean, possibly it's just a guess. but they seem to know when other things are in the woods, whether it be us or dogs or other Sasquatch, and it's probably a combination of smell, hearing, and sight. But I'm just guessing at this point. I just know that I used to have this naive idea that I could sneak up on a Sasquatch if I was really quiet, and that will never happen. They know I'm there long before I would know they're there, because it's their domain. They live there all the time. They know what the sights and sounds and smells of their own home are, and when a foreign person enters that area.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no telling. I mean, obviously bats have like even radar built into, sonar built into their bodies. Maybe Bigfoot do too, right? I mean, there's no telling.
Perhaps, yeah.
Huh. Well, Akron Musa says, while I'm waiting for conflict, I listened to a whole podcast. Well, we weren't that late today. Jim, did you find that howling audio?
I did not, but part of it is I can't see well enough. But
yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Don't stress yourself looking for it.
What I can do, Michael, is I can send you a copy that you can play for your folks later on.
All right. Well, I can do that. Maybe the next show we can. Next time I do some kind of open lines thing or something.
Sure.
I wound up doing some Red Arrow video last night. I'll do that, guys. Every once in a while, I'll throw up. If I get bored sitting around the house, I'll come on and just chat with people. Sometimes I do that. So maybe we'll do that again here pretty soon. So that'd be pretty neat. But don't push it. Don't push yourself. Give your eyes a chance to heal. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, I suppose, and we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Sure. Well, our store is located in Bailey, Colorado. We're about 45 minutes into the mountains west of Denver, in the foothills is what we call it, at about 8,500 feet. And we have an online store. If you go to our website, SasquatchOutpost.com, we do have an online store with virtually everything that we sell in our physical store. And then we have our podcast, which is called You Don't Know Squatch. And we have 2 seasons in there now. We're taking a break for the summer because we're working on a new movie, which I can't talk a lot about right now, but one of these days, hopefully you'll hear about it. But we will pick up our 3rd season of the podcasts in the fall.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I tried hitting that podcast link earlier today. I was going to post a link for it in the description box below, and that's where all Jim's links are, down in the description box below. But it was down; it wouldn't let me go there. So I think the site's down or something.
Well, you can find it on YouTube. You can also find it on our actual website, youdon'tknowsquatch.com. So one of those 2, you should be able to find the episodes. There's 22 episodes in there right now.
All right, awesome. So I'll hunt for the YouTube link and post it in the description when we get done. Great. Jim, thank you very much for taking the time to come on Conflict Radio today, man. I really appreciate it. I hope everything works out with your eyes and that your brain gets used to it.
And thank you for the privilege of being on and for putting up with a few mishaps at the beginning.
Oh, no worries. I was keeping everybody up to date on what was going on. Let them know we were running a little bit late. So just hang on for a second. I'll talk to you just as soon as we're finished up here. I want to thank everybody for joining us on Conflict Radio today. I want to thank everybody for the support that they've given the show, whether it be Super Chat or just checking out our store. It greatly is appreciated. Thank you very much. It helps keep the show going, that's for sure. And without the T-shirt purchases and things like that, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thanks very much for everybody coming on. Remember, you can always find us online. Just go to www.conflictradio.com. We go live on our YouTube channel every Monday and Thursday, or at least we try to anyway. Sometimes we move it to Monday to a Tuesday or something like that, but normally we have 2 shows a week unless we have a last minute cancellation or so. You can find us on Apple, iTunes, and all of your normal podcast catchers. That's going to do it for us, guys. Remember, batten down the hatches and be safe.